A petition has been started for a British teacher who was traveling in Indonesia and arrested for a couple joints of cannabis sativa. And in Indonesia, in Jakarta, where he's now being held, he's going to get at least 4 years in prison and perhaps as much as 12 years due to their local drug laws. So the petition is written to the British Embassy in Jakarta, asking them to intervene on Mr. Neville's behalf. And I don't know Kirk. I haven't seen any of his videos even, but I can certainly empathize with his position. I haven't been to Indonesia. The deepest into Asia I've been at all is Israel, which is not that deep, or at least it's fairly isolated from, the Middle East, Middle Asia, and the East proper, and Northern Asia, Eurasia, and so on. So, never having been subject to their laws over there, I can only really speak from my sort of normalization here in America to American drug laws, which are not all that less strict in many states. I'm in California, so our at least marijuana legislation, our treatment of that particular plant, or that particular natural substance, is a little more lax, you might say, if you're of a conservative leaning, or progressive if you're more liberal. But I think across the United States as a whole, let's just say at the federal level, marijuana is still a Schedule I substance, which means it has supposedly no known medical usage, that's obviously false, just scientifically at this point. But Schedule I is just the most severe form of substance abuse that our government is capable of prosecuting. And when you have it in large enough quantities, you will have your door broken down by a SWAT team of DEA agents that will come in and steal all of your property and relieve you of your rights to privacy and even self-possession. They will arrest you and charge you with drug trafficking. Now, what's interesting is that our own government has, for many, many years, participated in so-called drug trafficking. All governments have participated in drug trafficking throughout the entire history of the Western world, whether it's opium, the British Empire and China are first engaging in their colonial encounter, or tobacco and sugar, as again Western European colonial powers interacted with the rest of the globe, right? South America, North America, and these substances, tobacco and sugar and so on, were so valuable to Europeans. In other words, Europeans became so addicted to these substances that they were willing to turn a blind eye to the various widespread moral indiscretion of slavery. And moral indiscretion doesn't even seem strong enough. It's just closer to pure evil. This idea of enslaving another human being, stealing their labor from them for our own profit, be it monetary profit or somatic profit, right, through the pleasure given to us by these substances, tobacco and sugar, and coffee beans today. These are all legal substances, legal drugs that our civilization, all the governments of the world, that our societies have accepted We sell them to one another in broad daylight. Their effects are no less powerful than many of the illegal substances on the black market, but nonetheless we accept them because they serve our economic and ideological ends. When it comes to other substances like marijuana, which again is a plant, one of the oldest known cultivated natural things that we know of, human beings have been growing hemp and consuming cannabis for probably 10,000 years. I mean, we can prove with archaeological evidence, at least back to ancient Vedic peoples, so 3, 4, maybe 5,000 years ago. But undoubtedly, just because we don't have records doesn't mean that this wasn't being used far earlier. And hemp was being used for rope and perhaps even paper. So the first forms of culture really depended upon this hemp plant that we entered into a symbiotic relationship with. So whatever marijuana is, it's been intimately bound up with the evolution of human culture since the very beginning. But, only very recently in the 20th century it was declared illegal, as was opium and other substances, because they didn't seem to foster, and they certainly, I would say, don't foster a kind of neoliberal, capitalist, workaholic mentality. Caffeine, tobacco, alcohol, these things serve the ends of capitalism, of a society of ownership and work, which is kind of a class difference, right, between laborers who must sell themselves to earn a living, and capitalists, or those who will buy the labor away from individual workers. And in that sort of a situation, a substance like cannabis, let's say, is not going to foster that kind of a competitive interaction. It's going to foster a more egalitarian and horizontal form of relationship, where life becomes more a matter of playful interaction than combative, or you can play at combat certainly, so it's not just play versus combat, it's play versus work, right? Play versus selling oneself or buying from another with a kind of a weapon. Is money a truly vital source of energy worth going to war with one another over, worth mugging one another or murdering one another over? Or is money a piece of paper that we've printed green to give us the false impression that it's made of life, right? That it's a vital substance like plants. We've just printed green symbols and mistaken them for the shared life energies that we all swim amidst and must necessarily give and take from one another. So nature is primarily a gift economy, which is simultaneously an economy of theft, a black market where everybody gets what they deserve, but nobody asks for anything more than they need. It's sort of, the original communist society is the earth itself, the biosphere. So I think in order to for our society, and it is more and more recognizing the social, cultural, and I think cognitive potential of cannabis and other substances that are also considered Schedule 1, like various psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, DMT, ibogaine, ayahuasca, peyote, mescaline. I think there are precedents in the Supreme Court where certain native populations have been allowed to practice rituals involving ayahuasca or peyote, sort of traditional ceremonial events are allowed to take place, the Supreme Court decided that this was okay. And it's a matter of how widely this law, or this interpretation of the law by the Supreme Court, should be applied. Should it also be applied to white people is the question. And I think this is a new frontier of law, and I think signing petitions like the one that is being passed around for Mr. Neville in Jakarta is, even if you don't know him, a symbolic step in the right direction of getting world governments to recognize that they cannot pretend to control the drug war publicly while behind the scenes with their various intelligence agencies profiting on that drug war.